This is the Actal MKA 1919, and while it may look like something out of AR's Gone Wild, this is actually a 12-gauge shotgun. I bought this gun over a year ago, had it imported from the United States, specifically to shoot 3-gun with. This is a great competition shotgun. So what we've got here is the larger 10-round magazine. Of course, in Canada, this has to be pinned. So most of the time, you're just using a regular 5-rounder. I've been tinkering with box-fed shotguns for a while now. I will say hands down, this is my favorite one. This is the counterpart to the Saiga shotgun in the United States. Of course, being in Canada, we can't have Kalashnikov variants. While it shares no components, the idea is we want to mimic as many mechanical similarities to the AR-15 as possible. So our magazine release, our bolt hold open, and our safety are all the same sort of setup. It even looks like an old A2. Of course, that is enough to make the RCMP listed as a restricted AR-15 variant, which isn't a huge problem if you're using it for competition purposes, but it does mean I can't take this out and duck hunt with it. Before I get into listing all the reasons I really like this shotgun, let's talk about the iron sights. Out of the box, they are literally the worst irons I have ever seen. They are plastic, they are junky, they are way too high, they're not even a peep sight, they're this weird fake dovetail sight, literally the worst. I would recommend any owner take them and immediately burn them or throw them away or bury them in the backyard so that you'll never have to look at them again. You can see this Mipro light is actually a little high already. That's where I'm getting my dot, but really I could be sinking right down here, which is why I like to shoot with a micro red dot on this. There's also a lot of upgrades that you can do to the 1919. Firebird Precision in the United States has built a bunch of premium parts, so you can get a complete aluminum lower, you can put all Magpul stuff on it, you can get a forward charging handle. However, part of the appeal for me is that this gun is only $650 US. So I'm still under $1,000 even after buying a half a dozen magazines. I have done a few very, very simple upgrades to make it run that much better. The factory charging handle isn't bad, but if you put a little 4-cent rubber nipple over that, it's a lot better. Because the magazine release is close to an AR-15 standard, I was able to retrofit an Odinworks release onto this, which makes it a little easier to access from the index finger. I don't mind the idea of a forward charging handle on here, but I am loath to add another $300 onto the gun. There's been a couple of versions of this gun already. This is the XN model, which is what you'd be most likely to buy off a shelf today. That had improved performance with lighter loads. The other thing that's new is coming from EAA, and their whole pitch is that they're doing improved charging handle, bolt release, ambidextrous safety, that kind of thing. I believe they're calling that the 1919 Match, and that's brand new for this year, so I haven't seen it anywhere yet. Firebird Precision also makes an enhanced version that's essentially all aluminum and built off the same concept as a 1919. This gun is remarkably light. I believe it's 7.5 pounds with optics. Of course, that'll change if you start trading out parts. In my first year with this shotgun, I did experience a few problems. It is, like the Saiga, heavily magazine dependent. So one of the first things that I did was label all my magazines and then identified a couple of failures with different ones. One of the biggest issues I would get is a pseudo bolt hold open. So the idea is that your last round, you want your bolt to stay locked to the rear. So when you insert the new magazine, you hit the release and you're good to go again. You're not playing with the charging handle when you don't need to be. The issue I was running into is that on some magazines, the bolt hold open wouldn't lift high enough. And so the bolt would get caught somewhere other than the bolt face. So it locks halfway to the rear. At which point I can pull out the old magazine, insert a new magazine, but when I go and hit my bolt release, nothing happens. So then you have to slap the charging handle, and it's really not good for the bolt carrier group to have it gripping in that way. The solution I discovered thanks to the internet is to widen your magazine feed lip so that your follower sits a little higher, so your bolt hold open lifts a little higher, so it'll engage consistently across the board. There's a little bit of tinkering to be done with some of this stuff to make sure that it's running. That being said, I've never had to take this gun to a gunsmith. I did have one reasonably embarrassing malfunction with this gun this year. The roll pin that holds your extractor in place on your bolt is actually not a roll pin. It turns out when mine came from Turkey, it was a nail. So one unlucky slug shook that nail loose and up and immediately jammed between the receiver and the bolt carrier group, In order to prove the gun's safe in the middle of competition, I essentially had to force the group back and jam the nail in there. Fortunately, it was soft metal, so it hasn't damaged the gun at all, and I've since replaced it with a proper roll pin. When I first wanted to start shooting 3-gun, I realized that I was going to have a really steep learning curve when it came to all the shotgun manipulations. Rotating the shotgun so you could get better access to the feeding port, grabbing 4 shells off your belt and feeding them, reverse loading, all that kind of thing that are really important for competition, I was going to be at a serious disadvantage with. Indexing a magazine is something I already know how to do. Carrying magazines, activating bolt releases, these are all things I'm really familiar with. You could argue that I skipped the hard work of learning the skill by jumping to something that shares the same mechanics as a rifle. Shooting a box magazine-fed shotgun in most competitions will place you in open class, which means you're going to be up against all the guys with race guns and fun things too. With almost a 20-inch barrel and a variety of larger magazines, I wouldn't really consider this a home defense shotgun. I would say this is a gamer gun from the box.